Good morning, everyone, and this is another fabulous edition of the CoreCommerce webinar series. My name is Chris Graffinino. I am the COO of CoreCommerce, and I've been doing these weekly webinars, 3 months or so now, and I try to keep them within 10 or 15 minutes, but the point of these webinars is to just highlight a certain feature of the system and just shed a little light on what it is uh, and how it might work. And that way, if you're not familiar with it, maybe you'll learn a little bit about what it is. If you are familiar with it, maybe I mentioned something you didn't know, or the whole point is to just increase the awareness of all these features in the shopping cart and make sure you know that they are there, one way or the other. So with that, I appreciate everyone who's joined today. Going to go ahead and get started. This will be recorded and posted on our website later today. So if you have to leave early, or if you've missed any of the other webinars that we've done, you can certainly go to our website. I'll mention it at the end, but it is corecommerce.com/webinars. And you can see information about what the next webinar is going to be, which that page will be updated later today. And there's also a link to every other webinar I've ever done, and which you can go watch that as well. So with that said, I will proceed. Today's topic is going to be shipping restrictions, and how you can use these to lower costs by restricting certain options. And whether it's to lower costs or to just, if you have logistical reasons why certain items can't ship certain ways, this feature allows you to do that kind of stuff as well. To move on, again, introducing myself, my name is Chris Graffinino. Most of you know me by now. I am the COO of CoreCommerce. I've been with this company since 2003, actually since before it was called CoreCommerce. Most of you probably don't realize that our company started as a separate shopping cart platform before the software as a service model really was created or took off. And then the CoreCommerce product itself started in 2008. So I've been here for a long time, seen just about everything you can when it comes to e-commerce and how people sell online. And I've done sales, I've done support, I've done development in some cases, I've done testing for our developers as well. So I know just about everything there probably is to know about what CoreCommerce is and what it can do, and so far and so forth. But to get started, let's define what shipping restrictions actually are. So the tool that we have built in is a way to take all the shipping options that you've created, whether you just have one shipping zone for the entire world, or if you break it down into 4 or 5 different zones, one for the United States, one for outside of the United States, one for Alaska and Hawaii, or however you do it. You've gone through each one of those zones and you defined what all the shipping options are, whether that's UPS real-time rates, or whether that's FedEx real-time rates, or the Postal Service, or whether you've hardwired your own shipping to be $5 flat rate, whatever you've done. You can take all those options and go one step beyond that and actually restrict which options show up in that zone depending on what items are in your cart. So just one simple example, if you have product A and product B, and product A is, you can't ship it using a ground method, but product A you can ship using a ground method, you could go into product B and restrict it from allowing ground shipping. And what would happen is if I added product A to my cart, I might see ground, I might see air, and I would see the other options that were there. But if I added product B to my cart, now all of a sudden the ground option is hidden because it knows it can't allow you to pick UPS ground for product B. So with that said, I have a couple other examples of how I've seen people use this. So if you, example one on this list, if you want a product to only offer free shipping if it's shipped to the UK, but not if it's shipped to the US or Canada. You can do stuff like that. Another example is if you have a product that you do not want to offer ground if it's in Tennessee, but it's okay to offer ground to any other US state, you could do stuff like that. Probably, I would think the most common use would be if you have items that cannot go air, meaning we have a customer, and I won't really get into what they do, but some of their products have lithium ion batteries in them, and because of that, you are not allowed to ship those products using an air method due to um, Homeland Security related stuff. Those kind of products can't be on an airplane, right? So he has to make sure that, but he uses FedEx, I believe, to ship all of his items. So what he has to do is on those products in which he knows the lithium ion battery exists, he has to go into those products and use the shipping restriction feature to make sure that the air options are turned off for that product. So meaning if I put that product in my cart, um, I will only see FedEx ground options available to me. And the other option, the one side effect that might cause in his case would be, what happens if the person lives in Hawaii, right? Well, that person simply just can't buy those items because they're not allowed to ship those things to Hawaii because they can't ship them air, right? So if you have to pick a ground option, which ends up going by boat somehow, I don't know. But the air options just won't display if that item happens to be in the cart. So it's a good use to not only to potentially affect what the shipping rates are that you may be charging to a customer, but to ensure that shipping options that are not allowed are actually not allowed and not accidentally selected by customers unknowingly, right? And so to set this up, and you've some of you may have seen this before, but if you go into your settings tab and then you click shipping settings, you'll land on a screen similar to what you see in this screenshot. And one of those toggles is going to say restrict shipping methods by product. And if you turn that on and you hit configure, um, it's going to take you to a screen that will ask you for these couple of options here. And what these options are for is for when there ends up being a conflict, is the word I would use to respond to this. So you can read what it says on the screen in the screenshot. If there are two items in the shopping cart and both products are restricted to different methods, in other words, one can only go one way, another product can only go another way. Therefore, you can't find the common ground between the two. What should it do, right? So a perfect example is you have a product that literally can only go FedEx ground, and then you have another product that literally can only be shipped next day air, right? So you put both of those items in the cart together, they can't both go independently in two shipments. So this screen is asking you, how do you want me to handle the scenario when that happens, right? Most customers set it up in such a way where this doesn't really happen, but of course we want to make sure that there's something in here logic wise to account for it should it happen. And I'll go over a little more what the conflict scenario is here on this next couple of screens. So a conflict can happen, as I just mentioned, when you add two items to the cart or three or more, whatever, in which there is not one single common shipping method to offer the client. And a good example of that would be, I think I just kind of read through this. I'll just read through it again just to make sure we're all clear. Is, let's say you put two items in your cart, product A and product B. Product A can only ship UPS ground if it's inside the US, maybe because it's got a lithium battery in it, right? Product B, for other different reasons, we can make up whatever reason is, it can, for whatever reason, it can only ship next day air inside the US. So you can see what would happen if I added both of these items to my cart. The system's going to go, well, this product can only go this way. This other product can only go the other way. Which one do I pick? I can't make them both go ground because product A can't do that. I can't make them both go air because product A can't go air, right? So that's where this option here comes into play. And there are a couple of different choices on how you want it to handle that scenario. And that's what I mentioned on this screen. So we can just say, do you want me just to ignore what the restrictions are and just display everything and let you pick what you want? Maybe that comes into play. Maybe that's okay. But if you're in the lithium battery type example, that first option does you zero good, because the whole point of restricting the options in that scenario is because you physically or legally not allowed to do that. So letting them pick it anyway, um, is not an option right now. If you were restricting shipping options and it wasn't because of some legal restriction, then you might be okay with, okay, in this scenario, it's okay to just let it go and let them pick the one I don't want them to pick. But if you're forcibly wanting to restrict because you have to, because the law says so, then option number one just won't work for you. You can just option number two really wouldn't work in that scenario either, where it's just like display only the most expensive option. It's just, I would pick between ground and air, whichever one was greater is the one I would show you, is essentially what that says, which in the lithium battery example, that wouldn't work either, because now you're still showing them an option that may or may not be allowed for a certain item, right? The third option is just going to basically say, give me a custom shipping name, like combined shipping, you can call it whatever you want, and I'll just add up the price of ground and add up the price of air, sum those two together. If ground was $10 and air was $20, it would do 10 plus 20 equals 30, and show you one option for $30, and you would pick both. That's essentially what it was. So there's not a true, magic bean but option, so to speak, to solve this dilemma, but it does give you a way to at least handle it so that the customer could still do something and still check out, right? Um, and and again, this scenario is probably happens one out of every 1,000 orders, probably, if you were going to just put a number on it. Um, for the customer with the lithium example, he literally says every product can go every method except these like 2 or 3 items just can't go air. So it works out great for him, because all that happens is if that one of those 3 items happens to be in your cart, it just hides the air option and you have to ship the whole order ground. But if that item happens to not be in your cart, then it will show you the different air options as well, and you can move forward. So in his case, that conflict scenario never happens, because he's only removing certain options from a few items, and everything else allows everything. So the conflict never really comes up. So now, once you've turned this feature on and you have decided how you want to handle the conflict scenario, the next and last step is to now go through each item and tell it what you want to do. And we actually have an import tool that will help you import these restrictions, to make sure that these things are flagged on for everything. But if you go into inventory and then you go to manage products and then you edit a product, inside the general section of the product editor, one of the accordion tabs will say shipping info. And when you go into that tab, you can then flag this individual item as requires restrictions, right? So if that main toggle is off, it assumes there are no restrictions for this item, and it will allow any method, period, no matter what zone you end up, what zone bucket you fall into, right? But if you turn on the main toggle, which is, you don't see the main toggle in this screenshot, but it would be right above the first zone, as you would see in this screenshot, there'd be a little toggle to say, yes, I want to enable restrictions. And when you turn that on, you'll see something similar to what you see in the screenshot show up underneath. So it'll group every single shipping zone you've created. And that's what you see with unspecified zone, and you see United States. Those are the actual zones. And then underneath, it's showing you every possible shipping method that you've enabled in that zone inside the shipping tool itself. And in this case, what you're looking at here in this screenshot is this customer has gone into this product and said, you know what, for this specific item, if you happen to fall into the United States zone, I only want to offer ground home delivery, FedEx 2-day, FedEx Express Saver, and FedEx Priority overnight. I do not want to offer any of the other options, right? even though those options are available and for any other item, um, you would see FedEx Ground, for example, but on this product, it would not, it would just hide FedEx Ground. It would not show it to you. Does it make sense? And so with that said, let me just check my chat real quick here. Okay, yep, we'll get to some questions here in a few minutes. And for the unspecified zone, he only wants international ground and international economy. Any of these other options, even if they're available from FedEx, even if FedEx's API returns half of those, it's our system's going to only show you the two that are flagged here because that's what we're saying. So on a different product, I may have left the main toggle off, which would have just shown everything, right? And so that's essentially what that happens. And once you've gone through all your products and you've configured all these options and you've hit the save button and you've done all that, then you're done. All that happens going forward is when the customer adds items to their cart, and they could be on the view cart screen and click calculate shipping and do it from the pop-up there, or they could click checkout, and when you go to calculate shipping on the checkout page itself, the logic of that screen is going to review all these restrictions and determine, are you using the restrictions? Do any of the products in your cart have the restriction toggle enabled? If so, what are those restrictions? And I'll make sure I hide any of those from the drop down that I end up showing to the customer. And then of course, it just, if that conflict scenario happens to bring itself up, it will deal with it accordingly and respond based on the setting you've created. So um, it'll go through it. There's a lot of logic behind it. It has to go through every single item in your cart. It has to determine if any of those products have the restrictions enabled. If so, it has to figure out which individual options are on for the zone that customer falls within, and then make sure that any other options that are not flagged are removed from what we show to the customer in the dropdown. And then it goes through that process for each item and make sure that only options that are eligible for every item in your cart show up in the dropdown. Then the customer picks which option they want, done. And that's really what it is. So, again, it can help not only if you have, legal restrictions, as refer back to that lithium ion battery example. If you have stuff like that, or if you're just trying to, hey, I would rather just not offer ground and make somebody pick second day air or overnight, just so the shipping, I can charge a little more for shipping, or whatever your logic might be there. If you have certain methods you just choose not to offer people. One option is, you want to only offer like a 3-day select for UPS or something, if the person is also in the same zip code as your physical business, or instead of ground, or you may want to offer only USPS or something, that kind of stuff. Even though there might be UPS, FedEx, might be all these other options available, you may only want them to have the option to pick priority mail from USPS, for example, because that's by far the cheapest option, and you don't even want them to pick anything that might be a little more expensive. So it's things like that where it's probably not as much about you saving money on shipping as much as, although it could be, as much as you, in some scenarios, making sure the customer picks the cheapest option, not necessarily the fastest option, because you just want to make sure you're charging as little for shipping as possible. And doing your research, it may have not made much of a difference on a time frame, but it's cheaper, right? So with all that said, that kind of ends where I was with it.